Alright, today we're looking at the Drum Kastle by Spherical Sound Society and the Tabor by Jolin Lab. Two DIY modules that I put together myself, both from small designers with really quirky takes on rhythm. This is the Tabor, I don't know how to say this thing. It's awesome. It is a 4-oscillator Vactral based avalanche thing. Okay. The build was relatively straightforward, mostly through-hole components, and you can see here all the different Vactrals for the different oscillators that are all chained together in a way that is not really controllable and just chaotic. It's 2 breadboards, so it did take a while to put together, and it's heavy. This thing has got weight to it. There's a lot of noise in there. It's great. All right, let's look at the interface on this thing. There are 4 oscillators, 3 of which have knobs. You can see 1, 2. There's the first knob and the second one over there, and the fourth one's kind of split. The third one only has CV input. I'm not sure why, but it's kind of cool. And each one has an F and an R, so for the frequency and the modulation amount. And again, they're all kind of avalanche chained together, so who knows what they actually all do. And then every knob has at least a CV input that you can move stuff around. Output-wise, you've got the main output, which is, everything put together. And then there's the ZZ thing, which is kind of a fuzzed out envelope version. And then there's this TR thing, which is a bunch of triggers, which I have never found a use for yet, but I guess if you want to burst a trigger, it's cool. Then on the input side, there's also this RM, which is really important. We'll come back to that. It's actually how you starve the Vactrals of power. What's the first thing to take from this thing? 1, it is truly chaotic. Let's give it a listen. Yeah, that's how it starts when you sound it. It just makes a bunch of noise. And if you twiddle the knobs, it makes even more noise. I've got to run through a bit of a reverb just to give it a bit of thing, but you can see, and there's no real way to pitch it or anything like that. It just kind of, does stuff, and there's 4 oscillators all working together in wacky ways. It's great. And you can see in the middle there the colors, which kind of show up on my phone camera, actually flicker and make red and blue based on the frequencies and the amount that the various oscillators are doing. Okay, but second point here, because it's so noisy and you can see it gets pretty bird chirpy, it works really good with a filter. Because I don't like the sound of dying birds that much. I usually run it through a low-pass filter just to kind of take off some of that high end, because I don't know, you turn the knobs and you're not sure exactly what you're going to get. So here you can see I'm just running it through the Pico VCF1. Now, third point here. All right, just modulate everything. Modulate the shit out of this thing. I've got off screen here the oct. So I'm just going to start randomly patching it into inputs, and it just sounds cool. Alright, see, this is just an LFO run into, in this case, the modulation for oscillator 3 and the frequency for oscillator 1. Just really, everything goes crazy. And you can just, change this to the frequency for oscillator 4. It's great. You never know exactly what you're going to get. It's kind of the lucky dip of modulation, I guess. Yeah, more modulation the better. I got 3 different LFOs running at different speeds into different inputs, just getting all kinds of chaos. It's great. Point number 4, this thing loves a wave folder or distortion. Just off screen, I've got this thing running through the Bastel waver, and you can see you you grab some of those low frequencies, filter out the highs, run it through a wave folder, and get some crunch. Yeah. Okay, now we're going to talk about the secret sauce of this whole thing, a sequencer. Sorry, I'm just blasting out for a second here. Alright, so the best thing to do is this RM thing I told you about, which actually, ignore that, I've got a bunch of drum machines running for a second moment. Run a sequence into the RM, so starving the Vactrals of energy at a rhythmic level. What I'm doing right now is just sending a basic trigger into off-screen my pressure points, and so it's sending through kind of a 4-step sequence of various CV into this RM. Of note, it doesn't always work with all the things you can send into that RM. There's some sort of polarity issue or something. So for example, if you try to plug it into the main outs of the Spherical Rampage, it doesn't work. It'll actually stop the Rampage from cycling. I'm not sure why, but most things are fine. So again, this one I'm just running a sequence from pressure points and a whole bunch of LFOs and modulate, and now you start to get some really cool chaotic rhythms, but underlying it there's actually a beat. And so speaking of beats, this thing really starts to shine if you throw it over an actual beat. So off screen here, I've just got grids, triggers from samples from my Disting Mark IV to the same tempo in a second here. Just wiring it up. And now it just starts to add some cool stuff to a drum and a snare. Let's get rid of some of that chirpy nonsense at the top end there. Give it a little more crunch. What else can I tell you about these guys? Oh yeah, so Jolin Lab is from Milan, Italy. They describe themselves as audio electronics labs specializing in Eurorack modules, sound sculptures, and DIY workshops. Yeah, this thing's just crazy. Alright, let's slow it down. Throw it over a big, deep kind of hip-hop style bass. Oh yeah. Back to just listening to it by itself, so no drum beat anymore. This is just this thing running at a slow pace, so you can really hear what it sounds like when those Vactrals get starved of energy through that RM input. Alright, great. Now let's look at the Drum Kastle. Alright, this thing was super easy to build, like less than an hour. It's just one board. All you do is just basically solder in the stuff. All the SMD components are already pre-soldered, so it's super easy. You just put the chips and stuff in. Now, cool thing about this is that chip right there, you can replace it with other chips and you end up with the original Kastle or some other versions of the Drum Kastle with different firmware. It's pretty sweet. So you just kind of buy one if you want to swap out those chips. It's cheap. This thing was like, I don't know, like $80, $100. It's great. So, all right, so let's listen to this thing in action. So there is a ton of information on the Drum Kastle online. I recommend watching the original Kastle videos. It'll kind of explain everything on how it all works. What this has is a couple changes. So yeah, the drum output is like it normally supposed to, but it's hardwired, so a couple of connections, so you can just turn it on and it starts to run. A couple other things that are useful to note: there's not the 2 or 3 inputs per thing. There's just only one output or input, kind of jack, and that's cool. And then there's some attenuators and some switches that are different. But basically, it's the same thing as that little standalone synthesizer thing that Bastel made, with just some cool things. All right, so here you got various CV inputs for each of the knobs. Then there's a bunch of outputs for the tempo, pulse, and I don't know, all kinds of other stuff here. And then the bottom row is the main audio out. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty much the same thing, but just kind of easier to play in a Eurorack format. Either way, let's give this thing a listen. And yeah, it is all about quirky noise exploration. Okay, so there's some different oscillating modes. I'm not really sure what it does. This delay thing here is at noon. It's very little delay, and there's a positive and negative envelope. I tend to have the drums all the way to the left. I'm not really sure what that does. If you go online, the original Bastel version has a bunch of charts about how the envelopes and stuff work, but whatevs. Then there's pitch, does what you expect to do, and tempo, what you expect to do. Pattern mode's pretty cool. If you flick it to the top, it's kind of a 4-step pattern or 4, bar beat pattern with subdivisions. In the middle, it's kind of an 8 version of that. And then if you flick it all the way down, it goes into free running mode. So if you go down here, again, what it does is it free runs for a while, and when you find a bit of a pattern that you like, you can flick it back up and kind of hold that portion of the pattern. So kind of useful in various other bits and bobs. All right, let's speed this up a bit and listen to the patterns at a bit faster pace. Because of the kind of random nature of it, it's literally about exploration, and there is no clock in. There's a clock out we'll get to in a second. Alright, there's also noises out. I'm not really sure what this thing is good for, except for I love running it through feedback loops. So you take this thing on top of it. I've got it right now run off screen into a dark matter, and it's just kind of pitching that feedback into a bunch of extra chaos on top of it. And much like the Tabor, this thing really shines when you put it over other drums. You can see that a lot of these drum sounds that come out of the machine aren't super low, but I'm just going to throw this into... The tempo pulse is going to trigger the clock on a grids, which is going to trigger some samples off the Disting Mark IV. So just to kind of kick and snare to get this thing going. And you can see it just really starts to make that just a bit groovy. Flick it down here, get a new pattern. There you go. We got a new loop we're playing with now. Take that LFO. So internally on this thing, there is actually internal LFO for its self-modulation. I love patching that into the delay, just because it starts to, the decay. It just starts to kind of change the length of the notes and give you a bunch of, extra noises, really. Grab another loop. And this thing, because of its kind of clickiness, really starts to shine with a bit of delay, or in this case, the data bender. So I'm just, again, clocking the data bender just to give it a bit of a tape fail type sound. And yeah, slow that down where you can really hear it. That gets groovy. Alright, let's add in the Tabor now. Yeah, let's go. Let's both these modules together. Same beat. Man, get some noisy jams. Wow. It's crazy. Tweak the pitch and keeps going through those different... So each time you turn the drums knob, there's different drum synthesis that happens. Again, watch the Bastel video. I just know if you keep tweaking it, God, you get some, great noises. throwing a bit more of that feedback. Yeah! When the noise is out, yes. Alright, let's grab that loop. Change it. Yeah, let's give it a bit more of a, even more kind of chaos off the data bender. Alright, what I'm doing right now off screen, I'm actually changing the kick sample. We're gonna slow this down. Whoa, we're gonna get it. Yeah, let's give it, let's go D, let's go nasty. Oof. Yeah! Ooh, what BPM is that? Who knows? Ah, that's good. Alright, that's all we got for today. Some crazy DIY modules, the Drum Kastle and Tabor. Make noisy rhythms!